Recording in progress.
All right. Good evening. Today is Monday, October 21st. It is 6:30 p.m. and we are in the Ritter Memorial Building main floor meeting room. My name is Peter Beardmore, Chair of the Capital Planning Committee, and I am calling this meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. To view this meeting remotely from a computer, please use the link provided in the agenda. And in the event of a problem with the remote meeting feature, this meeting will proceed in person as scheduled. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. I am tonight recording from a webcam to my immediate right, so I will be doing my best to follow the discussion with the camera for the benefit of those watching on Zoom. I'm not, and I'll explain why in a moment, but I'm not anticipating a large audience on Zoom. But we will make sure that this is recorded in posterity, and we have my buddy to the left over here recording for the benefit of public access. Is there any public comment? Mr. Bowen?
None.
No? All right. Okay. Then I will seeing no public comment, chair's report. Following our last meeting, a couple of things to report. First of all, we still do not have either issues relating to IT resolved. That includes a shared folder that we can all work from, which is why we all got a few different emails from me today. It is the least efficient way of doing business, but that is the way we are operating for the time being. And we do not have a date and time specific to hear a capital plan request from the IT department. One other item of note, in the conversation that I referenced at our last meeting pertaining to my meeting with the DPW director, he had brought an issue to my attention pertaining to some new state of Massachusetts DOT rules that are basically advancing or accelerating some vehicle efficiency and electric vehicle requirements for heavy equipment, which are basically intended to be adopted nationally in January of 2027, but Massachusetts had accelerated to 2025 and was going to create some potential hardship for us when it came to obtaining heavy equipment vehicles. Basically, they're not available, and they're much more expensive than the gas-powered equivalents that exist today. I had passed that notice along to our state delegation and received a notification from Representative Kuchmarek, from Representative Kuchmarek's office late last week, that the DOT had postponed that enforcement by 1 year. So that'll go to January of 26, and we'll see where we're at a year from now in terms of pricing and availability of these more efficient heavy equipment vehicles. I didn't want to forward that communication because of open meeting issues in my communications with the legislative offices, but following this meeting, I will forward that communication from Representative Kuchmarek's office to you all so that you have it and you're read into the situation prior to our meeting with the DPW in early November. And that is it for my chair's report. We'll talk about follow-on meetings in a few moments. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay. If it's all right with you all, in the interest of time, I'm going to move review and approve minutes back so that we can get right into the meat of the discussion, which is the presentation from the school department and the superintendent. Is that all right with you guys?
Yep. Sounds good.
All right.
Did you send the presentation? Or?
I did earlier today. I think I copied you. No, I think certainly when I sent it.
I got one for
If you go to
Wednesdays.
the revised agenda for today,
Has it in that.
if you go down to the
Oh.
bottom of the email, the attachments are there. They're not listed otherwise as
Oh, okay,
attachments.
I got it. Sorry.
Yeah, it took me a few minutes.
They're also fairly large, so they were not attached but linked as Google files.
Yep.
You should have access to it. Shouldn't be a problem. But if you have an issue, by all means, let me know. And again, I apologize for the technical challenges.
Got it fine. Just took me a minute to find them because it didn't show up in Outlook's convenient.
Heck yeah.
Hey, look, I'm a nice little download for you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So with that being said, let me open my deck. And share it on Zoom. Dr. Burnham, you're welcome to take up a seat at the kids' table.
Where's that?
And while I'm looking for my file, I'll turn to the camera. All the cool people in the room. All right. We are shared. I did not print out the deck. If you guys want to join in the Zoom, you can follow along. Or you can just read as you go, whatever your preference.
I'm trying to get it ready because I don't have.
I have the presentation open, so.
Okay.
No, I found it.
And Dr. Burnham, I am currently sharing the PowerPoint, so you and I can connect via slide number or title or whatever your preference is as I'm advancing slides. So while we're waiting, the issue that came up relative to the Zoom is the Zoom that is posted on the town website is not the Zoom that is in the revised version of the posting. It was posted physically, I went over and checked, but did not make the town website tonight. So if you want to get into the Zoom, you have to use the version of the agenda that I emailed earlier today. Like I said, it's been one of those days. And I recognize that the town clerk's office is running double duty with early voting. So I think that's added to the challenges. Okay, are we ready?
We're ready.
Tom, you good?
I'll follow along as best I can.
Okay. All right, Dr. Burnham, the floor is
Okay.
yours.
All right. So we'll jump right in with requests for FY26. They are being presented in the slide deck as well as in the more narrative version of the request in priority order. These priorities were assigned and voted by the school committee on September 4th. So priority 1 is a feasibility study for the entry and driveway expansion at the primary school. We're estimating a cost of $30,000 on that. Funding will allow for a designer to come in and do a feasibility study of the following areas: the Mass Ave entry, current parking capacity, expansion of the driveway itself and driveway parking to the school facility, evaluation of emergency access of police, fire, and EMT vehicles, as well as a review of any environmental limitations due to wetlands. For us, we see this as a safety liability. When there's parking on both sides of that driveway, the available roadway is really not sufficient to allow any of the larger emergency vehicles to get through. We also know that we would need increased parking. We know that parking's a problem with any school event. where parents would attend.
I only got the town ones. I don't know why.
Again, this is priority ranking number 1 from the school committee. Priority 2, again at the primary school, this would be for designer services for playground equipment. Again, we're estimating $30,000. Funding here would allow us to contract a playground designer who would work with all the stakeholders in developing a new age-appropriate, inclusive, and accessible playground for the students of the primary school. Here too, we see the benefits as reducing liability to the town because the scale of the play equipment is reduced, and therefore we see the potential for reducing risk of serious injury. Of course, we would want the playground designed to be inclusive and accessible for all students, which currently students with disabilities have limited access. Priority 3 is at Turkey Hill Elementary School, and that's the replacement of a hot water tank. We're estimating that the cost here is $20,000. We would be replacing a hot water tank that was built in 2002. The typical useful lifespan is 20 years, so we're already on borrowed time with that one. Upgrading this piece of equipment, we would expect that we would see improved energy efficiency and certainly reliability, knowing that we're not worrying that it could go at any time. Historically, for maintenance on this one, routine checks and cleaning of the tank. And again, this is priority ranking 3. Priority 4.
Just on that priority 3,
Yep.
would you intend to get state funding to help with that? Question leading towards the useful life of the building discussion that went on for a while.
So, relative to MSBA funding,
Yeah,
this kind of a project right now is not
Okay.
on any of their accelerated repair projects that are allowable. This year, the projects that were deemed eligible were limited to roof replacement and window replacement.
okay.
And just more broadly, they're moving away from boiler replacements because they're looking to go more green energy in the future. But those were the only 2 kinds of projects for accelerated repair this year. We won't know until January
Okay.
what kinds of projects are on the acceptable eligible list for next year, but I'm not anticipating that this would be one of them.
Okay.
Okay, priority 4, also at the primary school, this would be for a generator. Currently, that's an updated quote that you have here, $171,896. Currently, there isn't a generator.
In the deck, we've got the wrong number.
Right. Again, this is like hot off the presses. This was the last edit I did.
So the generator is, say again the number?
The generator is 171,896.
Is that sized for the entire school or just for those items?
Just for those items. The original 70,000 that I had as a it wasn't a true quote. It was more of a number that was provided to me by the same company over the phone, not having the benefit of being out to look at the location of the places that they would want to be able to power with the generator, location where they would be able to put the generator, etc. And also not knowing exactly the size that they would need for the generator.
This, do you want questions now or at the end?
Sure.
And the priority 4 was under the assumption it was about $100,000 cheaper?
I don't think that the priority was based on the dollar
Okay.
value as much as the benefit of the project. Right now, the primary school does not have a generator. So if we were to have a prolonged power outage during a cold snap, we run the risk of freezing water lines inside the building because we can't keep the heat going. That leads to all kinds of damages on its own, but if we can't keep the freezer and the refrigerator in the kitchen going, we lose all the food that's located there too. So I don't want to speak for the school committee that the priority was based on the dollar value, but more so on the benefit
Yeah,
for the project.
I mean, the number is new, so the number was the number when we discussed it.
Right.
So, we, depending upon how this conversation goes, it may be something we revisit from a priority standpoint.
171 is the proper number?
171,
Okay.
yeah. The other part of that discussion is we are experiencing a high rate of power outages just in that neighborhood of Lunenburg. And there has been some reporting that for lack of a generator and the hard off, hard on effect that a power loss and recovery creates, that is taxing on all of the systems in the building, not the least of which is the panel itself, which is not designed to not have some sort of uninterrupted power supply supporting it. So there's a likelihood that there's a, I don't want to call it a maintenance issue because it's not, but there's a degradation of the equipment that we have on hand for lack of this equipment, but that's just part of the story. It's not the whole story.
Yeah.
Okay, priority 5, the primary school window safety film. You have an updated quote on this one as well. $26,865. This is not a new project. We've had this discussion prior. But there is some additional information this year around potential energy saving value that could come from installation. Priority 6, replacement of the security camera central server. This is a new project, that's why you don't have a number for it, and I'm sure you've heard from other department heads that we haven't been able to get into the ClearGov and enter new projects, and therefore we haven't had any new numbers issued as far as project numbers. The replacement here would be $40,000. We would be replacing the current box and adding a second box in a separate location for redundancy. Here, if the server goes down, the district still has access to camera footage and would be capable of viewing camera feed in the event of a cyber incident or a district-wide outage. In terms of a cost-benefit analysis, cloud backup still requires the purchase of an on-premises proprietary box. The camera feed does not go directly to the internet. There would be the added cost of recurring subscription fees if it was cloud-based. When you take a look at year over year, in the end, the cloud-based backup would be more costly. And in the event of an outage, there would be no recording, and we would not have access to previously recorded footage, which is why we're recommending this option where we have the double server backup.
Is this the same system the town is getting or a different system?
That's a good question. I don't know which system the town is getting.
And then does this feed to public safety or just to,
Public safety has access to our cameras.
so there might be an advantage to having the same system?
I can talk to the LPD about that.
Okay.
I would think that doing the model that we have, just adding the redundant component, should leave them intact the way they are. They should still be able to access. This isn't
Okay.
like moving to a
Yeah, it may not be.
new model. It's just an updated
Yeah. Gotcha.
server.
Is this done through SUSE or no?
No.
So, okay, so you have your own networking people? Okay. The last paragraph, I'm not understanding, the one that starts with cloud backup still requires. I understand that sentence,
Yep.
but I don't understand the next one. There would be an added cost of recurring subscription fees.
So when we do cloud backup, there's a subscription fee for the cloud
Are we
backup.
doing cloud backup now?
No.
Oh, we're not doing cloud
Correct.
backup.
We would opt not to do the cloud backup. We would prefer to do the replacement of the server and add the additional as a redundant backup.
So am I to assume we're not doing any backup right now?
No, we are. We are. But the current server is at end of support.
No, I understand that, but where are we backing up to now?
We have a server.
There's still 2. We're going from 2 to 2. It's a
Okay.
1-to-1
The-
replacement.
Oh,
Or a 2 to
okay.
2 replacement, as it were.
Gotcha.
It's just that we considered the option of a cloud backup when we had that discussion, the
Okay, that's,
benefits
yeah, okay, that's
and
not clear in that paragraph. That's
Yep.
why I'm asking, because it says negatives year-over-year cloud would be more costly,
Yep.
but nowhere does it say that we considered going to the cloud.
So
Okay.
part of the discussion was $40,000 is a lot of money for 2 servers that
Not
are
really.
going to be sitting there
That's about right.
collecting video, right?
Wouldn't
But
it be less expensive if we
would it
went
be
to
less
cloud?
expensive to go to a
And it's not
cloud?
It
actually.
would be less secure to go to the just to the cloud. So this is more secure. But a cloud backup would still be recommended. But that would be.
All right, so priority 7 is the middle high school window safety film. Again, this is an updated quote for you, $33,250. And again, you have some information relative to the product itself and the potential for some energy savings. Priority number 8 is a utility pickup with plow. We got an updated quote on that one, and it is for $64,780. That would be a quote through McGovern Municipal HQ.
What was the number again?
$64,780.
So is that the updated number?
That's the most recent quote we got.
What kind of truck is it?
It's a utility, so.
Is it a Ford or a?
It's, this one here would be for a Ford. It's a 350 with a plow. It's an 8-foot, and it's got the utility tool storage boxes on the side of the truck versus a regular plow. A regular pickup wouldn't have that, nor would a dump truck. This particular vehicle would be replacing the 2005 Ford dump truck. That was, it came to the school department after the DPW was done with it. We got that from the DPW back in 2022.
This is a recurring one from last year, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Multiple years.
And you can see that, we've had some maintenance on that particular vehicle as well, repairs that need to be done. It hasn't always proven recently to be very reliable when we need it for operations. So those are the proposed requests for FY26, again, in rank order as voted by the school committee. When we look forward to FY27, in no particular order, we've got the primary school driveway expansion project. This would be the actual construction work based on whatever comes from the design work.
How was that quote arrived at?
It's an estimate. The benefit of doing the engineering study would be that we would get a much better sense of what the actual work would entail, what would be needed in order to make the improvement, and then some more realistic cost estimates.
But still, you put in a cost, so you must have some criteria, or did it just like?
I can tell you that this was the criteria that we had, generally speaking, from the year prior. And as we know, these numbers don't always hold water, unfortunately.
I think the number was arrived at if memory serves me correctly, with the previous facilities director around what would it cost if we had to basically put in what we currently have for driveway and parking again. So in the absence of an engineering plan or a concept of what else we would do, this is more or less a replacement cost of what we currently have for that plan.
Okay.
That was
some anchor point.
That was the genesis. Now, where they got that quote, I don't know the specifics of.
The next project, primary school age-appropriate and accessible playground equipment. Again, this would be the actual installation, removal of existing equipment, and installation of new equipment based on the design study that we hope to conduct in FY26. Again, we have taken broken equipment offline until it's repaired, but we also ensure that there's a mulch bed of rubber mulch pellets that's maintained at 12 inches in that entire area. There's visual inspection of the actual equipment, but we haven't had to do any major repairs. Again, this is about making it a little bit safer based on the scale of the equipment, but also making it such that it's accessible by all the students at the school. But this is also a playground that's used by the community when school's not in session. So to have it be something that's more accessible to all the residents in town that might need this kind of accessibility.
Is it the original equipment there now?
Yeah.
So what is that? Make it
Yeah, about 20 years old.
20, wow, okay. I was gonna say 15, let's see, time flies.
Can you just ask maybe Chris Ruth whether he believes that 170 is a good number?
Okay.
Because they're going through a couple playground estimates throughout
Okay.
town.
All right. Next up is primary school gas condensing boilers. In FY27, we would be looking just for the funding to have the plans developed. And again, the benefit of doing the plans in advance is that we would have a more realistic cost estimate as well as the specifications that we would need to put the project out to bid. And we're estimating 30,000 on that as well. Next project in FY27 is the primary school classroom mini splits. That's phase 2. I can tell you that we were able to submit by the deadline Friday this project as a Green Communities grant project. And we're gonna keep fingers crossed that we can actually get funding through the grant.
Phase 2?
This would be phase 2 was submitted.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I just wanted-
Yep. The good news is that the units that we did install in phase 1 are also eligible for some Unitil rebates, some energy rebates. So again, we're anticipating that there would be rebates for the units that we would be putting in for phase 2 as well.
I see that it includes XX systems. Do we know what XX is? Or
So-
is this $483,000 and we don't know how much we get for that? It's just,
No, I need to get some additional data on that. We literally got everything in under the wire on Friday, but I had sent this off in advance, so I'll get back to you on that,
Okay.
the details there. All right, next project, Turkey Hill Elementary School classroom mini splits. If all things go well and we receive the grant for phase 2 at the primary, we would be potentially looking to submit for at least some portion of this particular project at Turkey Hill through Green Communities. I don't think it's going to fund the entire amount that it would cost us to even to do the estimated 17 classrooms. This project is important in that at Turkey Hill, we have had challenges in recent winters bringing the temperature of the classrooms and maintaining the temperature of all the classrooms at a reasonable temperature during cold snaps in the wintertime. The system struggles. So for us to have the mini splits at the Turkey Hill, it's a great benefit to have the cooling for when the building is really hot, when we have hot spells. And we can get those in late August, September, even into early October, as well as late May and June. But this would be a benefit to us even in December, January, February, when we have cold snaps.
You will not want to use these in December, January, and February.
Why?
Not for cost. I had mine in my house, and I turned off my furnace just to see what it would cost, and it tripled my electric bill.
So
Tripled.
we wouldn't be replacing the building-wide system. This would be for
I just say they're
supplemental
not
heat.
under 35 degrees. They do not run efficiently, and with the cost of Unitil being near the top in the country, it will explode the electric.
And I'll have hopefully some additional information for you, maybe springtime, definitely by next fall. The MSBA was taking a look at heat pumps for schools. So you remember I said that they were moving away from boiler replacements. They're moving to the green systems, and they're currently this year trying to do a study and get some information relative to whether or not this type of accelerated repair project would be one that they would be looking to fund in future years. But they needed to get some information and data on that first.
Does Turkey Hill have a generator?
Yes.
It's a little bit of a quandary, which is probably better that this is out at least a year, in that we have the study going on for Turkey Hill right now to kind of look at all of the systems and upgrade, replace all those various scenarios associated with, and to include ADA-related topics. We have the MSBA business going on where they're not doing boilers. They're studying mini splits and other options that are quote-unquote green for school heating and cooling. This would not be the year to commit to a project of that scale, in my view, but hopefully a year from now we'll have a lot better information to compare from. But nevertheless, we have a serious heating problem and cooling problem, but a serious heating problem in that building, and we've got to figure it out. We get classes that are pretty frigid.
Yeah, as a former educator who has one kid in Turkey Hill now and has one kid just got into middle school, so he's been there, with no unkindness meant to the school department, that building doesn't have, in its current status, that building does not have the option of being a great place for learning. The staff there is doing amazing work with what they have. But the physical environment, and I think temperature is a key component of that.
Does Turkey Hill have all the electrical for this? I know we've talked in the past about the poor electrical runs throughout Turkey Hill.
So that's part of what we would have to figure out. We'll end up bringing in electricians to figure this out, to work with the folks from Dakin who have worked with us on the primary school. The initial thought was that yes, there would be, but usually once people really get in and start taking a close look, that's when you get down to, the reality of what can and cannot work. But I can tell you that, just going through the process for a green committee for the grant, we had to get together a lot of information relative to energy savings. The units that we installed at the primary this past summer would have to be tied into the building management system, because that leads to better energy efficiency when the whole building is running versus when the units in the classrooms would be available to run. So we will start taking a look at this now that we managed to get everything on an accelerated timeline and in by the deadline for the phase 2 at the primary school. We can start working on more specifics relative to Turkey Hill. But based on the numbers for the primary school, and if you think, all right, this many units for this many classrooms, that number there is a ballpark just for 17 classrooms, and that's not going to cover all of the spaces where students are occupying space. Those are your primary classroom spaces, not your art room and music room, etc.
Gym.
Right.
This year is the first year I've heard that there's a heating problem in the building. So, I mean, again, these are not designed for, especially in our environment with Unitil, it's just not designed for these things. I also remember the last time some people were talking about them not really being, depending on which unit you get, lifespan and viability for commercial area. I mean, you actually may make the whole HVAC even more unmanageable. I remember that was discussed last year or the year before. Anyway.
There was some concern last year in terms of just the lifespan of the condensing units.
Right.
And I'm not sure that was ever resolved to anybody's satisfaction, but what little research I was able to do, and I'm an expert, 0.0 expertise in this, the consensus seems to be somewhere between 10 and 15 years, but there are some skeptics that say 8.
Right.
So,
No, I 10 to 15, I would think is my understanding is the right range, depending. But it's also in usage. I mean, I know them as home units. I don't know if these are commercial units, or even if they're even determining or making the distinction between the two, which is again very important.
Yeah.
So,
One of the hard points in the discussion about mini splits and associated heat pumps and everything else is the frequency with which they are used. But just frankly, they're put in use wildly inappropriately. They're the new hot tech, right, within HVAC. They're getting used a bunch. And I trust the school department would do its due diligence on this, and it sounds like you are because you're discussing supplemental, but they're one of those things that has a real good use in our climate, often as especially for heat purposes, as a supplement rather than your main driver. But people will push that, they'll tax it. That can absolutely hit lifespan and everything else.
Theoretically, what we talked about with all the entities that were part of pulling together the grant submission for the primary school, the use for supplemental heat on the shoulder seasons. So, when we get a cool day or two in early October, we might use some heat there. Again, April, chilly days even in May, these units might be good for that. Not so much about providing heat through the winter months on a day-to-day basis. And even for us at Turkey Hill, it's really there as a backup for those days that, the main system is just really struggling. And it's not necessarily even for all of the classroom spaces as much as it is the classrooms that appear to be on the end of the run for the heating system currently. That's where the temperature tends to drop off. So if you're the last on the line to be getting that run, your classroom is struggling to get to a temperature that's pretty decent. And we have to relocate classrooms. Just like we have to relocate classrooms when it's really too warm in the classrooms. We find other spaces that we have to move them to. Not ideal when
How
you've
old
got
is the
maybe.
boiler in?
It's original to
The boiler.
Turkey Hill?
the system.
The
is-
system is original, the boiler is not.
Right,
That's
Right.
not the problem. The problem is that the blowers that are out in the wing
Yeah.
are all, my understanding is original.
Yeah.
So it's not so much the boiler's ability to heat the water that's running through the system, it's the blower's ability to, and the pumps that are in that system, ability to move the water and blow the air or whatever it's doing. But
Right, I mean,
it's
obviously
the
I can-
plant that's out in the classroom.
I can understand that if a system used to work and it's not efficient because it has components that are failing or aging, you know, that I understand. So, I mean, I would look to, why wouldn't we just look at what the price of it?
So I would say that we'll have information on that because that'll be part of the
It'll be part of
study,
the study.
and we will have
Okay.
some answers. The entire study needs to be brought to completion by April.
Okay.
So we'll have more information on what our options may or may not be here relative to the building itself. So,
Gotcha.
all right. Next is the middle high school turf field. It's the entire complex. We had ARPA funds to do an engineering assessment. We got a full report back, and what they're saying is it's a $920,000 estimate to remedy all of the hardscape and the drainage in the hill behind the bleachers under the press box. And then another estimated roughly $500,000 to replace the turf and track. And there's a full report on that.
Are you replacing the track or just the turf?
I think based on
There's a little bit
potential-
more work that still needs to be done there.
yeah,
But, because the work that we had done in terms of the engineering work literally went down to the flat surface. So there's a little bit more work still happening with respect to the flat surface itself. Mr. Bigelow believes that the track needs to be at a minimum resurfaced. Not necessarily replaced, but resurfaced. And the turf needs to be replaced.
yeah. I mean, it's the whole area has taken a lot of wear and tear from the poor drainage that we've been dealing with for years.
Who's Mr. Bigelow?
He's the AD. All right, next project is the middle high school auditorium booth. These would be for audio upgrades, which would lead to some improved audio in the auditorium during large events, plays, concerts, assemblies, but more importantly, actually, the special town meeting and the annual town meeting. Hopefully, with improved audio, we would have some residents who have decided that the audio is so difficult for them with hearing impairment that they no longer attend. So hopefully, if we can do some upgrades here, we do have devices that individual attendees can get when they come to the meeting that will help if they are wearing hearing aid devices. But we do need to address the underlying general audio issues as well. And we're estimating that based on a quote from last spring, approximately $44,000. The middle high school concession stand field house, we'd like to be moving that entire building over to a key card system and away from a hard key. It'll be a lot easier for us to provide access to all of the users, but also maintain security, because we'll be able to schedule when each user's key card would actually provide them access to the facility and which part of the facility. that's it for 27. Moving on to 28. Again, in no particular order, the primary school gas condensing boilers, that's the replacement based on whatever the design assessment plans would call for. We're uncertain at this point whether it would be eligible at all for anything Green Communities. It's under review. This is one of the projects that they're taking a look at. Given that the deadline for fall submissions was just last Friday, the folks from Green Communities were really kind of focused on trying to help folks get their proposals in under the deadline. So it's still under review with Green Committee. And again, based on the word from MSBA right now, projects like this are not looking promising for accelerated repair reimbursements, but that could change. Turkey Hill, a complete window replacement.
And this is a whole nother year now, right?
This is 28.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of floor-to-ceiling windows in that building, as well as the awning type windows that are in each of the classrooms. Again, all of the windows in this building are single pane, so there's not a lot of energy efficiency here. It's a project that, potentially we'll have some additional information coming out of that ADA building study for the Turkey Hill as well. Again, another pickup truck with plow. This is just a regular pickup, not a utility, not a dump truck. This one would be replacing the 2012 Ford F-250, which will be 17 years old in FY29. Current mileage on that vehicle is a little more than 52,000 miles. This is the kind of replacement that may be eligible for some grant funding, much like the vehicles that are being replaced at the police department, moving to a hybrid model. And again, given the criteria that are coming from the state that are on hold for a year, we'll have more information about what will and will not be allowable as we proceed through
What are the
next
two
year.
trucks used for?
So
Or how many trucks do you have, I guess?
we use them for plowing. We use them for moving materials from one building to another. We use them throughout the year for grounds maintenance. We get a windstorm, lots of branches come down. We're moving around trying to clean up the grounds from, heavy debris. Sometimes, we've had significant size tree limbs come down that we're cutting up and moving with trucks. And of course, we use all the vehicles for snow removal throughout the winter. But they are in use all year round.
And the thought is you'd replace with another F-250 or equivalent? Okay.
In that particular one, yes.
Yeah, because the other one was the F-350.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Because it's replacing a typical pickup at this point.
And no one takes these home at night,
No.
right? They're not like some of our vehicles get
No.
taken home.
Nope. They remain on property.
I think you still got to convince me on the plowing, but why the DPW can't do that? Peter and I will have that debate for a long time.
You just come back to the other meetings from last year and the year before.
Pounding on each other.
Okay.
Sides are chosen.
The window replacement project at Turkey Hill, that's the actual installation of new windows. Again, this is the kind of project that may, again, by FY30, I'm not sure what will be the allowable accelerated repair projects, but if we were doing this project today, this would be a project that would be eligible for MSBA's Accelerated Repair Program funding. The next project is the middle school, high school replacement of the wall-mounted projectors in all of the classrooms and the common areas. We have a wall-mounted projector in the cafeteria, in the collaboration rooms. By this point, they'll be, at end of life. Typically, these have a 10 to 15 year lifespan. We do replace bulbs, but eventually when these things start to become less reliable, it's a lot more challenging to troubleshoot older tech equipment. And there might be something that far out that might be more cost effective as a replacement. But right now, this is the replacement that we can see on the horizon.
Yeah, I was going to
But
say,
we'll stay
TVs
current.
are what we use at
Yeah.
work now. No one uses
Right.
projectors anymore.
Yep. So we'll see what the technology looks like as we advance another couple of years. There might be something that's actually more cost effective.
They are pretty amazing. It's really good tech. It's worked out well. A lot has been wrong with that building since
Yep.
we put it into use 8 years ago, whatever it was, but this is one thing that has actually played out pretty well.
And then we've got network firewall replacement. That's an estimated cost at this point of $80,000, and we would be looking to, replace the network firewall because by FY30 we're expecting that we'll be at end of life on that, and potentially not having any routine updates that are maintaining and viable. So
Current firewall is already 5 years old.
Listen to what kind of firewall they're getting for $80,000. That seems extraordinarily high. I don't know what's included in it, so I
Nor
don't
do I,
know.
yeah. But I recall replacing the last one, so it's hard to believe it's been 5 years already. But that was a project my first year on the finance committee. So,
oh wow.
yeah.
FY31 district-wide phone system upgrade. By FY30 we will be working with a product that is no longer supported. So we're going to have to make an upgrade at that point. We're hoping at that point that we can upgrade to a system that's completely voice over IP. However, maybe by that time there's some more advanced technology that might be the better move. Still a little bit too far out to say for sure. But just know that by 2030 the current system will no longer be supported. I've got Turkey Hill school renovation or new build sort of as a placeholder in FY31. Obviously, I think a decision will have to be made before FY31, but that really is pending all of the information that we'll get from the study that's getting underway on that building right now.
Because a new build wouldn't be the same thing, just renovations.
And that's why it's just a placeholder, right? Just to kind of keep it on everybody's radar.
Well, this committee would need to factor it into our plans.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, by FY33, we'd be looking for a replacement mower. We're estimating a cost of $55,000 on that one. And largely because at that point it'll be reaching end of life. And to upgrade and replace it means we're putting back in some increased reliability and reduced time offline for repair and maintenance, because the turnaround time on the repair on these is not always immediate. It could be out of rotation for a bit of time while we're getting parts or having it serviced. So FY34, again, this is more of a placeholder. By the time we're getting to FY34 and 35, the age of the primary school and the mechanicals on the roof will be reaching end of life. So we would need to do an engineering assessment to get specs and estimates for that project, followed by the actual replacement of those roof mechanicals. I'm putting in the $8 million price tag there based on the outrageous estimate that we got 2 years ago when we were looking to just add the condensers to the roof, and they were telling us that it would be wise, based on the age of the mechanicals on the roof at that point, to replace all of them. So whether that's a post-COVID really big jump, and that's not an accurate reflection of what the cost might be if we were to, get a cost estimate again today. Maybe it'll be a little less than that, but I think we're still talking a few $1 million on that, because it would be all the mechanicals on the roof at that point. So there's a lot there. And lastly, in the slide deck, you have a couple of slides that sort of map out the long 10-year look.
And what is the pink highlighted?
The pink
supposed
is
to
really,
recommend?
that's that sort of placeholder. All of those projects used to be in previous 10-year capital plans, but once we know what's what with the engineering assessment of that building, what's the actual cost? Not really sure. Are we really going to be able to take some of these projects as individual system upgrades? Is it really going to have to be more whole building renovation? We don't know. So that's why I kind of just put that pink zone there. Like, there's more information coming and we'll have to make some decisions. But also, to the point made, that if these are not individual system replacements, and depending on the system, even a system replacement may fall outside the scope of a capital project, and it might be more of a borrowing conversation that we're having around these projects. So that's why I kind of,
Well, borrowing will still be capital project.
well,
That's a funding
Debt.
problem. Right, but that's the funding, unless it's an exclusion
Right.
debt.
Theoretically, it should still be run through a capital plan.
Right, if
Right.
it's exclusion debt, then it doesn't, but.
so that's why that's sort of pinked
So the
out.
sums on that table do not appear to be accurate.
That's because I need to go back and update some of the newer quotes that I've got on this. These were the
I'm
map out
just
that we
summing
gave to.
down
Yep.
fiscal 26, and it does not equal 290.
I will
I'll
also,
double check that.
I'll reach out to you, Dr. Byrne, to get all those updates, particularly the ones in the current fiscal, because
Yep.
given what we're dealing with ClearGov, I think
Yeah.
we're looking at a exercise in pure Excel this year,
Okay.
based on what I currently know. So,
Then I can get you the updated in an Excel that you can take and manipulate.
okay.
And the pink on the turf and track replacement, again, that may be something outside of a capital project. And lastly, there's just the slide that rank orders on one page, all of the projects for FY26.
So last year, Mr. Heavy was like 2/3 of a way through a comprehensive assessment of all the buildings. I guess two questions: is that finished, and is that reflective in this 10-year plan?
Not fully reflective, not fully finished, but I think that really the most important information that we're going to get for a comprehensive look at what the facility needs are, big picture. The biggest piece of that will come from this Turkey Hill study.
Okay, I just recall that the list was quite long,
Yep.
and it didn't seem, I don't remember it all, but it seemed like there was things that were just not in this.
There was
bill.
there was a long punch list of issues
Yeah.
that have been punched, and they're outside, they're inside of the $20,000
Okay.
zone. And part of this, if you recall, during the discussion of the override last year, was needing some elasticity to be able to deal with these things where we didn't previously have budget.
Okay.
This year, we're still quite tight in that regard because we're paying for the 911 system and a couple of other things. But, you know, the hope would be that we're budgeting in a way that can allow for that capacity for punch list items to be dealt with, right?
Through the operational
Through
budget.
the operational budget, yeah. A good example is the elevator in the middle high school, you know, which was unanticipated, but upon further review, probably was avoidable, you know, had it been inspected and maintained in a way that
Right.
was on schedule.
Because a lot of, we can have regular routine checkups, if you will, when you contract for that service. So when you have a contract with an elevator company, they come out routinely and they'll do a quick inspection so that prior to the state inspection, they can catch anything that needs to be tweaked, maintained, replaced, what have you. Which actually, spending a little bit of money actually ends up potentially saving us in the end.
There are some other potential issues that, you know, frankly, when we get a new facilities director in, we're going to have to continue to look at.
Yes.
The entire HVAC system in the middle high school is very problematic right now, but I don't think anybody knows what the underlying issue is.
Yeah, and it's been problematic for years, actually.
So, you know, sooner or later, we're going to, when she said it's not complete, it isn't complete. Like, there's still some work to do there. So.
What is the status of all the capital projects that were approved for the school
I'm so glad
last
you
year?
asked.
Oh, good. I didn't even know that was part of it. Good.
The Turkey Hill window film is 98% complete. We're waiting on replacement of some of the larger glass panes because they were cracked. Those have to be ordered for the size specific to the window. So those replacements should be finalized this week if everything stays on track. And that's when we can call back the vendor to finish applying those few panes of glass applied in the film. So 98% complete at this point. The Turkey Hill exterior door replacements. There was a meeting last week with the architects for this particular project, and based on their estimates, the door replacement, including the labor costs for actually doing the replacement of the door, they're estimating at this point will be a little over $150,000. We also planned to build out a vestibule at the front entry. They're estimating that the construction of the vestibule will be just shy of another $82,000. So we're not going to have enough money with the monies that were allocated for this project to do all of the door replacement and the vestibule. What they're recommending is to move forward with the replacement of all the doors and potentially revisit the building of the vestibule as a separate project once we have another cost estimate on that.
How short are we? I don't remember how much was budgeted.
I want to say it was $187,000. So we're going to come up short maybe around $50,000. I don't know that I can absorb that in this year's operating budget. So stay tuned.
When will you know how much you're short?
Actually, when we get an actual bid on the doors. This is the architect's estimate.
Maybe make it more plain, the question. Will you know by the end of the year?
Yes. Yep, because the architects are ready to put this out to bid to the people who would actually do the doors.
Of course,
These are
any-
all custom doors.
Any ARPA money that we don't use, we're looking for places to put it.
Yes.
So if it's ready and you have it, then
So the town manager
shouldn't
had
say we,
mentioned.
by the way. Because
Yes.
there's no one else here. I.
The real we.
The town manager had indicated that he was looking for backups in case anything
Right.
fell through, anything that, could be done or is under contract. But, so we have a few things that
Good.
we're trying to pull together for that,
Okay.
this being one of them. The Turkey Hill fire alarm system is currently in process. Turkey Hill and primary school security access projects. Those are going to be out to bid by mid-November. And we are anticipating that the cost for those projects will fall within the allocated amount. So we're not expecting any overage there. What we're hearing from the architects, though, is that the groups that are going to come in and do this project, they are not going to want to work with us in an interrupted fashion. They are going to want an uninterrupted 6 to 8 weeks to come in, set their ladders up, have wires hanging, and not have to clean everything up, close everything up, so that we can go back to operating school the next day. So likely those projects will have to wait until summer to be executed. That said, our security systems currently are functioning, so that's not a significant worry. Not that it's a capital project, but again, the phase 2 of the mini splits at the primary, that's gone in as a green communities grant request. And relative to the Turkey Hill ADA study, the bids were due in October 16th at 2 p.m. We received 7 bids for the project. We started reviewing bids today. And we anticipate awarding October 30th.
And which project is this again?
This is the Turkey Hill engineering assessment,
Okay.
the whole building. The middle high school turf field feasibility study, that was ARPA funded, that's done. The primary school AC mini splits phase 1, this actually goes back to FY23 capital, but that is done.
So the ARPA for the field, turf field, but Mr. Chair, you said that that's not done because we couldn't
Yeah.
answer, but
So
It's- yeah.
there's an ongoing question about the drainage under the field itself. So the basically where that $50,000, I think it was $50,000 that was allocated through ARPA, that got us from the top of the hill to the surface. There's additional work that is happening right now between the facilities director, the outgoing facilities director, and some potential contractors and drainage experts.
Yeah,
to
trying to scope
determine
that out.
exactly what needs to be done to ensure that the work that's being done on the hill works with the drainage system under the field and that it's not overly clogged and yada, yada, yada. I had a extended conversation with one of the folks who was involved in the building of the project back 20 years ago. I think you were involved at the time as well. And we believe that there are some clogs still under that drainage system that still need to be dealt with. But exactly where they are and how to get to them, I think still is part of this determination. The other thing that I believe to be true, but still needs to be vetted out a little bit, is that the system that was put in place for the replacement turf that was done about 8 years ago is incompatible with the drainage system that is underneath it. And that is actually the cause for the hydroplaning and all of that stuff that we're getting on the field itself. So the issues on the hill and the issues on the field are not necessarily connected. In fact, they might not be connected at all. And that's what we're trying to put a finger on right now. Basically, long story short, the drainage under the field is a straight down, like the water drains is intended and designed to drain straight through the turf into a catch basin that takes it away. When they replaced the turf, they put in a padding system that was not permeable. And,
Be a problem.
and interrupted the drainage system. that is the current theory. And
Which
there was not
actually-
an adequate drainage system to compensate for that. And that, when you think about it and you watch what has actually occurred during a driving rainstorm,
sense.
it makes complete sense. And so that may be the missing link to this.
Yeah, because my understanding is that we didn't have the problem on the initial.
We didn't.
turf, Right.
We didn't. This is a relatively new phenomenon.
Okay.
Well, the last 5 or 6 years.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Consistently, every year.
so, and you know, I mean, part of it is when we built the field, turf was new. The technology has evolved a little bit along the way, and now the question is can we put something in that is compatible with the drainage system, that is safe, and all that sort of thing. So. Any further questions?
Other than that,
No.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Burnham.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch just to validate some of those numbers.
Yeah, I'll
the
run
next
those
couple
numbers
days.
again.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Minutes. So over the course of the late summer, I had forwarded, or Danielle Marr had actually forwarded to me, and I forwarded to you 2 sets of minutes that I then did not re-forward via email. So what I have done, you can pass those around, is print these out. And I would ask that you give these a read prior to Wednesday night's meeting, and we'll approve them Wednesday. We should have another set before Wednesday for our most recent meeting. She had reached out to me via email to see about getting
How many people did you think were in this
the
meeting?
attack. I printed 7 sets. I don't know what to tell you.
That's 7.
thought there might be.
Like more than 7.
School committee can't come.
Yeah.
Wait, what's this? There's another.
Sorry? Oh. Oh, all right. That's why.
Well, now we see that Chris
Oh,
is
there's
to
another
blame.
set of 7?
There's another.
Are you,
Oh,
are
that's
you
not-
trying to mask
Oh,
public
another
discussion?
Yes.
So anyway, so that's the deal with the minutes. I don't see this as urgent. If you guys could give this a read,
Sure.
revisit them on Wednesday, and hopefully we'll have another set. Danielle reached out to me because she wanted to attach the presentation and get some additional details on the police presentation from our last meeting. So anyway, I forwarded those to her, and hopefully we'll get another set of minutes to approve, and we'll have lots of minutes to approve in our next meeting. Next item on the agenda is the capital planning excerpt from the, now you can pass these around, from the proposed financial policies manual. What I did was, the only member to send me direct feedback was Mr. Bowen on the financial policies. And so I printed out and will forward you a soft copy of his notes, if that's okay with you guys. And again, I was careful not to violate open meeting law and send them in advance, but you now have a printed copy of his inline edits and notes, which include references, which is fantastic, to actual bylaws and policies.
Yes. In some cases, quite surprising. They
Yeah.
just changed it.
Yep. And so my understanding is that the intent of this document is to adopt this as new policy. So we can come at this one of 2 ways. Number one is we can read through it and break it down live in a meeting tonight or Wednesday. And I have posted this as a further discussion on Wednesday, so we have the flexibility of not landing on it tonight. Or you all can read it and send me additional notes, and then we can come up with a sort of a master list of notes.
So if we were to adopt this, there are some things in other documents that would have to be changed. Like, for example, and I'm forgetting now because it's been so long since I did this, but the charter has some things in it that are contrary to what this has, so we'd have to amend the charter.
So my understanding is that this is not intended to violate any charter. So that if it does, then I think we need to call that out and stipulate where those issues exist. My understanding on this, and this is an interpretation from a very brief comment that Mr. Terenzini made about a month ago on this, is that this is intended to be a replacement for the policy. So written in its entirety, it would become the policy. But a policy cannot, is my understanding, cannot conflict with bylaws or charter.
Well,
Or mass law.
Yeah.
okay,
So-
so again, only because words matter, certainly a policy can conflict. The point is that it can't override.
Fair enough, okay, fair enough.
Right.
Yeah.
The charter would win.
Right.
Right.
When push came to shove. And this is really intended to be how we do things, so we would want to be able, in my view, we would want to be in compliance with the charter and bylaws. Now, a bylaw is a lot easier to fix than the charter,
Right, and
obviously.
I
so-
misspoke, but it's just, for example, at the top of the third page here, this says that the responsibility of the capital planning committee with support from the finance director and the finance director.
What section?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my copy, which might be different.
What section are you in?
It's the section on capital process component. And it's the section,
They don't have letters?
capital inventory.
Okay, B, okay. So B, capital inventory.
Okay. So the text here says, with support from the finance director and the finance director town accountant. The bylaws actually say in conjunction with the town manager.
Yeah. So,
And there were just a few instances where they did things like that.
yeah, and in my view, I would prefer to have the most senior person responsible, even if we're working with appointees under that person.
Well, the problem,
But-
so, I mean, in my mind, and from my perspective, the problem is that the document was, the compilation into a single document was well intended, okay? But they provided back, DLS provided back to us a framework of something that I would believe they would have expected somebody in town to review, to do what Mr. Bowen has done. I don't feel comfortable doing our section because there's lots, as a take off my CPC hat and think about the select board hat, there's all the other sections need to do that. And they all need to be reconciled.
Yes, I think if you're gonna do this, you should probably hire somebody to do that.
But we need to, or assign somebody, but yeah, we should do it holistically.
Yes.
Like a person or a couple of people should be assigned to do this, instead of piecemealing it to different committees where everybody has a different perspective and some people have a greater depth into the town charter and not, and bylaws and not. I mean, so, yeah, we can't have things just be, I mean, I think somebody brought it up in this committee, and I think other committees like the finance committee may have brought it up too. It's like, you know, what do I know comes from where?
Right.
I mean, you pulled this together, and I think it sounds fine, devoid of, if there were no charter and there were no anything, this would be great. This would be a great starting point. But we do have all those things, and we don't want to be self-contradictory. That's going to make the matter worse, not better.
So what, I mean, we have a member of the select board and a member of the finance committee, the chairman of the finance committee here. What do you guys think we should do with this?
In my mind, I'm not voting to adopt this as a select board member anytime soon.
Okay.
We got way more important things that we need to fix in town before I get to this.
Fair enough. I'm responding,
Yeah.
as
To the
the
request.
CPC chair to
Right,
the request,
right.
trying to move this thing
I think
along.
I think that should be our response. Our response should be that, given the fact that there are, and we can present him with what Rob showed already, that there are conflicting components in the policy versus bylaws and charter and everything, and we don't feel comfortable reconciling that, and nor should it be our job to, comb through it with a fine-tooth comb. Somebody else should be doing this, because if it exists here, and this is one of the shorter sections of the policy, it certainly exists in other areas. So it's good that we got the document back from DLS, but it should not have been distributed to the departments and everything. It really should have been gone through when it was identified that we need to know which component came from where and what section. So, because I don't think the policy can replace an existing policy. That's fine. But if the policy contradicts bylaws in the charter, this can't supersede that.
I don't think
And
this
you-
actually contradicts it, though, because I think it just augments it. I mean, I think that in conjunction with the town manager is a good add for consistency, but the assistance to do this should
I mean, that's an
probably
example. I'm
come
not,
from the director and the town accountant.
Well, and it could be because our bylaw was established at the time that we just had the town manager. There wasn't a separate finance director. The town manager was the finance director.
well, where did you say this was in the charter, this part?
The bylaws.
Oh, it's in the bylaws. But you didn't cite that one in here, because you have bylaws other places.
Maybe we're looking at the.
He does on the.
Let me have.
Oh, it's at the
copy
top
that
of the
you
next
gave
page. Okay,
everybody.
sorry. Top of the next page.
Yeah. It's bylaws number 12, section 18.
Okay.
It says to tell you what I did, I struck the things in this document that were inconsistent with what was in another source, and I printed what was in the other source with the citation to it. So this policy here said finance director, town accountant, and so I struck that and I put in with the town manager because that's what the bylaw actually says.
Gotcha.
So the upside of this document is that if you're a member of the capital planning committee and you want to know what the capital planning committee is supposed to do,
Right.
you don't have to go chasing after 4 different documents to figure that out. Right?
No,
Like,
I think-
theoretically, this one document, if adopted and better aligned, would be a much better path, to value for any member of any committee with oversight or responsibility of any of these things. Right? Like right now, there's no single source to go to. Right? Like,
I agree.
and so I certainly see the value.
Well, I
of
said
this.
that. I said it's
Yeah.
well intended.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
Now, whether the town wants to have town council review it all, or
Well, town council would probably be, it would be out of the scope of what we do with town council,
okay.
I would imagine. And if they did it,
also
they would
an
be
expensive
expensive. Well, I mean, it would, since we pay them retainer, they don't pay them for general stuff, but this is not general.
Oh,
Hey,
this
look at
would
all
be-
our fiscal policies.
No,
Yeah.
this would be certainly additional.
Okay. So
Could give it to your law students as a project.
Matt, any thoughts on where you think or what we think we should do with this? I want to kind of get all of our opinions out.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, exactly what everyone has said. I share the concern about this isn't, as much as this is our piece of a document, it doesn't stand alone as part of a comprehensive package that should be treated as a comprehensive package, and because we see evidence that there is a small but real amount of misalignment with the documents that govern it, with bylaws, with charter. But by the same token, I agree that this having it's not really a single source of truth, but a compiled source of truth is really useful. On the other hand, because we're just going to keep spouting arms now, the thing that worries me is, okay, great, we get it all in alignment, we've got this, now the town has a document that's aligned across the board, and I see value in doing that, except then by law, I mean, charter less frequently, but that will change, by law will change, and will this be maintained?
Well, that's always the problem.
I said the answer, by the way, is no. And I don't mean that as that's not like a slash, that's a problem with the way these government documents for towns are put together. So all that said, heck if I know what we should do.
Okay. All right.
The maintenance, the fact that all of our governing documents, charter, bylaw, policies, procedures, and all of that are living documents. You are absolutely right. It is mandatory that they get done. And the fact that we don't have any oversight or any standing committee or job function that does it is problematic.
And I mean, there's a solution for how you build the documents to be more accurate in the long term with changes. The problem is that makes them inherently unreadable. Because we're dealing with that with all sorts of planning board, when we're putting forward a bylaw and everything, and we're really trying now to make bylaws that age well. And a lot of that is, we're not going to define X. We're not going to define zone 1 around a well or something because that's defined by state law. So we're going to say zone 1 as defined by Mass General Law.
Right.
Here we go. But that defeats the purpose of a document like this because then it's just a bibliography effectively.
No, it's not. Well, it's not just a bibliography. It's a hyperlink.
Yes.
Right? The whole document is a hyperlink document, which is what it should be. And if you had it in such a form that we had it in hyperlinks and it actually could click and you could go right there, you would have it together. The problem, I think, with this document, while I applaud the intent, is it doesn't want to cite things. It wants to reiterate, basically spit out what's over there and put it in here. And that's problematic because now the wording is in two places instead of one place.
It's not the same wording.
Right.
Several instances,
Right, that's what I mean.
The meaning was the same, but they just changed the words.
Right, and in law, that may actually be a problem.
It
Right.
may cause a change in meaning that was totally unintended.
Exactly. So, again, maybe it may turn out to be that this is really a not achievable for any length of time. I mean, if you get all this done and you tightly do it, and you cite everything, and then you start changing bylaws, if it's not useful in a year and a half or 2 years, what was the point?
Fair.
Like I'm trying to think of ways that you write it with inline citations that clarified that the amount of info that would have to be in that inline citation to give you proper context to judge whether or not the likelihood that what you are currently reading is fully accurate versus may have shifted. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot of information to include, but without that, it's then becomes.
So let me offer just a slightly different lens on this, and then we can wrap up this discussion. I'm perfectly fine with communicating back to the town manager and select board and say,
It's not mine.
one of our members did some work, and here's what we found, and this is what the ramifications are, right? And I think that I'd be happy to construct that communication. What I'm also wondering is, should we consider this an opportunity or not to look at this document and say, okay, this may be what Mass state law says, and it may be what the bylaw says, and it may be what the existing policy says, but it isn't the way we want to do it, right? Like, you know, are there things in here that need to be updated just because they're dumb, or there's a better way to do it, or something along those lines, right? Now, this may not be the inflection point to do that. Maybe the right way to do it is through a policy change request or through a bylaw change. But this could be a vehicle, potentially, right? So I just want to raise that as a different lens to think of this. I have no specific suggestions at this point, but I'm throwing that out there.
Also, because the work was just done to generate a version of this that is now in alignment with current bylaws and charter. There's something to be said about this is the opportunity to look at it and say,
Right. I mean, this talks about, you know, completing a 5-year capital plan and, you know, aligning to, you know, both priorities for the current year, reporting to the town manager, reporting out, you know, anticipated projects over the next 5 years, all of which is true. But this also doesn't address the gap that I've been trying to articulate around, okay, but there's a whole fiscal component here that is completely unaddressed. And it, by the way, it remains unaddressed in this document, right? Like a
Right.
plan as defined by this document does not actually include any fiscal analysis, right? So do we want to suggest that be added, or, you know, and I'm not
That's a
saying
fair point.
we should do it, but is this an inflection point where we say, this might not be the right way to do it in the first place, and maybe we should consider doing it differently, or, you know,
I think we should do that. I don't think we should do that until we're done with,
what we're doing now.
yeah.
That's fair.
You mean this season you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think
Well, I think the
we
fee- I'm
should
sorry.
take the lead from the select board as to what they would actually do with any analysis we did on this, because if we do all that and then it just never gets adopted anyways, then
Then we could have some of our evenings back for work that isn't going to matter. If the work isn't going to matter,
Right.
then
That's fair. But I mean, if the capital planning committee formally came to a resolution that we want the select board to change the fiscal policy,
That's outside the scope of what we're asked to do here.
yeah, the problem is this fundamentally says take all your other policies and adopt this almost. And until you adopt this in its entirety, we'd have to go back into 3.02 if that's where the Board of Selectmen policy is. And
But the problem is this isn't a policy. This problem is this involves bylaws too, and you can't do both. Policies are policies and bylaws are bylaws, and that's important. And if you're going to take everything and smush it together, and you're going to reiterate the verbiage, not by reference, but by actual inclusion of the text, that is usually problematic. And it doesn't make things clearer, which I think the intent of the document would be. It makes things less clear, and it makes them more ambiguous and overlapping, and then there's a mess.
Maybe there's a way to make a more general document that is just linked to the source.
Well, that's what I'm
material.
saying.
Yeah.
The hyperlinks, absolutely. That's the way the document, of course, should be.
Okay. All right. If anybody else has any additional thoughts.
So it's very clear
now
what you want to
Wednesday,
respond,
clear as
right?
mud, yeah.
yeah.
Which,
I will say for Finance Committee, there's a whole bunch of sections that we would have to review, and I have no intention of putting on the agenda till.
sometime after town meeting.
I have no problem in taking up this
Annual town
banner,
Yeah, yeah.
and taking up this banner with the select board and saying that, first of all, this should be punted for a while because we got a lot of bigger things going on in town.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two is, if we have to do it, we should take what they gave us and align it in the fact of what is going to be the final document. Like, what is the format of the final document supposed to be?
So one other question, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm beating a dead horse. The state somehow compiled this for us.
Yeah, there was a DLS, offering of service.
So in order to do that, they must have looked at the underlying things.
Yes.
Do they have a draft or an iteration or something that is annotated or no?
No.
That's it?
No, I think we asked them
Yeah.
that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't have that, and the way they did, I mean, I think there's some response that we have on an email from them.
I don't know.
Well, maybe the board got it. I'll try to look for it, and if I have it from my select board email address, I'll share it to everybody. But insofar as that, well, this is what we think the policy should be, and we looked at what you had, and we included that, but we had, where it was silent, we put in some other things that we think are best practices, and I'm like, this was like just taking 3 pack of cards and just shuffling them together and putting it together and say, here, we're done. I'm like,
I do think, generally speaking, this committee should be handed something like this, and there's one document we learn how to
That'd be great.
onboard off of.
It would be awesome.
if it did hyperlinks, I think to Matt's point about keeping it up to date, because we only have 2 times that they change a year, either the charter a lot less, but bylaws, we have 2 meetings.
Yep.
You could do it if you stayed up with it each time, because not many bylaws change per town meeting.
Right.
And policies, presumably the policy is changed within the committee or commission or board itself, so that they can do it then. And then, even then, it doesn't change all that often.
Yep.
But people have to put in the effort to do it.
Okay. I'm declaring the horse dead for now,
Okay, good.
That doesn't mean we can't still eat it.
but it's dead. I will put together a communication to the select board, copy the numbers of this committee, and probably not discuss it on Wednesday. Probably done what we need to discuss tonight. But
Is there anything that this board wants me to bring to the select board tomorrow?
I think you can easily surmise the conversation that we just had and the dilemma that we're in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I assume you don't mean surmise, you meant summarize.
That's right.
Okay, yeah.
You can surmise.
I can surmise it, because I'm seeing.
And summarize. Okay. Review schedule topics for further meetings. So on Wednesday, we are going to meet with facilities director. And on November 4th, we are going to meet with the DPW and the fire chief. And that is as far out as we are currently scheduled.
So where are we with the IT that was supposed to present to us last week? Do we have,
Nowhere.
nobody's responding to you?
That's where we are.
Who oversees IT?
Town manager.
Okay.
I got a text from Carter about half an hour before this meeting saying that he had put in a request last Thursday. He was due to meet with them tomorrow morning, and he would advise me following that meeting. So we have no resolution on that. So I will let you know when I know. And I will circulate some dates for later in November and early December to wrap this thing up. So,
Good.
is there any public comment before we adjourn? There's one telephone on the call. Give them a moment if they wish to speak. Hello, caller. Reminds me of my recent radio show.
It's not Bruce.
Any public comment from the committee?
None.
Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned.
Great.
Good night, everyone.